Good morning, Vikings fans. This is Morning Joe's, your leading Minnesota Vikings Tuesday morning podcast. A lot of competition there. I am your host, Joe Johnson, owner of PurplePTSD.com, VikingsTerritory.com, and PurpleTerritoryRadio.com, here with Mr. Joe Oberly, editor of the aforementioned network of websites. How you doing, man?
Good. Joe, hang on a second. Just a second. Hey, buddy, what are you doing? That's my seat. That's my seat. I want my seat back. What? No, I just left for a minute, and I've come back, and I want my seat. All right? No. Okay, fine. I'll stand over here, but I hope you don't mind my backside in your face, all right? Oh, sorry, Joe. Sorry, man. I just had to take care of something.
What was that all about? What's going on?
I'm trying to get back on the Kirk Cousins bandwagon. It's really And I know you're there, because I can see your little Big Ten pennant over on the other side of it, but I'm just trying to get the seat back.
That hurts. I had to basically write 2,500 words trying to delete history and ignore the fact that I officially went off the bandwagon in writing and in video after the Bears game. But we'll talk about that in a second, because I take pride in the fact that I was one of the last people to leave that bandwagon. It was getting pretty Oregon Trail-y. Everyone had dysentery and was dead. But really quickly, Morning Joe's is brought to you by Manscaped, manscaped.com. Essentially, the long and the short of it is that you can get a really sweet discount through our partner at Big Heads Podcast Network on Manscaped.com. Manscaped.com is basically taking care of your body below the belt, not using the same razor on your face that you use other places. And I think their tagline is I'm not kidding, their tagline is you use deodorant in your armpits, why not use it on the smelliest part of your body? And I don't know.
I hope everybody on the bandwagon is Manscaped, then. That's all I can say.
I know, it's really tight. Everyone needs to hit a Manscaped before they get back on the bandwagon, because I don't know. I guess maybe I'm different, but if you need deodorant,
how come your girlfriend didn't laugh at our little bit of theater there?
Can't you hear her in the background?
No, I couldn't. Okay, good.
Well, she's also lives in Canada, and I have a printed out picture in my wallet. She doesn't actually exist.
Nice.
But look at us. We're all jovial, and we're making jokes, and everything's great, which is a far cry from where things were around halftime, which is when my phone and Will to Live died at the same time. I didn't see a lot of the second half of the live chat during that game. Full disclosure, I watched the end of that game from the front yard of my parents' house through the window. I couldn't handle it, which is not a great testament to what we're going to be doing on Hot Mic coming up with our live commentary on the game. I don't know how that's going to work. But it was astounding.
Next door neighbor's yard watching the game, but here we are trying to broadcast the game on Hot Mic.
I missed the Minneapolis Miracle the same way, except for I was in my sister's kitchen. I don't know. My dad always told me as you get older, it'll get better in regards to like the emotions and the nerves. I feel like it's getting worse, and I don't know if that's just because there's the job aspect of this, and the sites do better when the team does better.
When the team's doing well, the closer you get to the Flames, the hotter it gets. That's all I can say.
Pretty much. I mean, the long and short of it being that was the type of comeback that would happen against the Vikings historically, not necessarily the other way around. I think the best way to explain it is the fact that no team has ever in NFL history come down from 20 or more and scored a touchdown on every possession in the second half, which is just crazy.
Yeah. I think that though, that isn't that just the 100 games that they referenced on the air. Is that what you're talking about? Because that was just in the past 5 years. I don't think.
Yeah, that was a different stat though. That was this one is having scored a touchdown on every possession.
Oh wow.
The 99 games was down by 20 at halftime. I think period, or there was another caveat to it.
20 or more.
Yeah. At halftime, and this one is essentially that the Vikings scored a touchdown on all four of their second half possessions, which again is crazy. I mean, any number of things could have gone wrong, and that game wouldn't have ended up going the same way. So I really, before we got into a little bit of the news for today and the week, just wanted your impression or take on that game as a whole, the comeback, all of it.
Well, it's interesting that you describe how you watched it, and what your dad said, it to a certain extent is true, and certainly being someone who covers the game, and I write a game wrap afterwards, so I'm writing during the broadcast, and I'm taking notes and writing some things, and I'm on the chat, so I'm a little more dispassionate, as a result, my age and from that, but and it almost starts in kind of disgust in the first half. It's like you see them, when I wrote about it coming into the game, that this is a prime opportunity for a letdown. Everything was set up. I mean, they're coming off a bye. They're rested. They're a sneaky good defense that everybody looks at their record. They only got 3 wins, so they just think they're a pushover. Well, it's not. And the Vikings coming off a big win, it was all right there. And here they come out and they do it in the first half, and you just go, my goodness. And you're starting to craft your post game wrap and say how where they've let down here and there. Well, then, it's one of those things that you always say, okay, you've got to have a touchdown on this first drive. You get the ball in the second half, you got to have it. Okay, they get it. So you start, getting in a little bit more. I said, okay, well, there's a chance. Well, then when Cook scores in the second touchdown, I said, okay, they're not, they're within a touchdown or so, or they're within striking distance, and you start, it slowly comes happening, and everything they did, and it builds and it builds. And here I am trying to be, still the reporter, and I am starting to get this sick feeling in my stomach when they're driving down for that. When Denver's driving down with an opportunity to win it. I said last week they did it against the Cowboys. Lightning doesn't always strike twice for this team. So I was getting, I don't think I could. I had people calling me and said, "Did you see that? Did you see that?" And I think everybody was going nuts, but I was, to be honest, I was getting a sick feeling in my stomach because I thought they were going to lose it, and it would have really set things up poorly. But it was phenomenal. Excuse me. And it turned what should have been a routine win into a very exciting game and a gut-wrenching finish, and huge for the Vikings going forward, because they've showed 2 weeks in a row now that they've jumped over some hurdles that I had set up for them. Win on the road against a good team in primetime, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
Well, here, come back when it's all against you, and don't just knuckle under and say, okay, God, we're beat. We just don't have it today. They didn't. They stuck in there, and they fought, and they came back, and you're going to need to do that from here on in the rest of the way to keep fighting, and not doing the Vikings thing that says, okay, we're down by 20, it's over. But They did. It was phenomenal.
I mean, yeah. Speaking of, roadblocks, it being a game that, for the people that I've kind of labeled, and I got really some angry emails about it. I mean, it's all in jest, but the Never Cousinsers that didn't want him here in the first place, that have explained away a lot of the wins the Vikings have had this year, saying, well, it's all built off the back of Dalvin Cook, or so on and so forth. But I think the really impressive thing here, and it kind of shows the divide in how people are reacting to this game, is that they were able to win a way that a lot of people, announcers, say it a lot at the beginning of the games, depending on which announcers they have for the Vikings. that this team can't come from behind, especially by multiple points. They need, and especially at home, they need to be up early. They need to let the defense do its thing while the other team is attempting to air it out to come back. And before this game, the Broncos were the fourth best passing defense in the NFL. They, Von Miller is having a down season, but they have a lot of really good players on that defense, especially in the secondary. And to have a second half where you basically had to be perfect and score a touchdown on every drive, it's just astounding that they were able to win that way against this defense. Another thing people have said since the Bears game is that they're not beating anybody of note. The defenses they play aren't very good, so on and so forth. Cousins is
those are true statements.
A stat pattern. Yeah, it is true. And maybe we needed they being the Vikings needed those games to build that confidence going towards the playoffs and playing tougher opponents. But without Thielen to come back and have almost 300 yards passing in the second half, no turnovers, 3 touchdown passes, it was arguably Cousins' best game. I would argue, you can look at the Rams game last year was a little bit more like the Dallas game. The Dallas game was good. He played really well against the Packers both times last season, but this was a signature win for Cousins and for this team. I mean, it was just wow. I don't remember seeing something like this in my lifetime, and apparently that's because it's never happened before.
Well, it's probably tough to see through the dirt on the window,
especially when they had the weather stripping on and all that.
I would say that I've heard several people say probably Cousins' best game, certainly as a Viking. He's had some. He played great against the Rams last year. He played great against the Packers last year up in Lambeau. Both of them losses, so you don't think about it. But he came back here and did exactly what you would want your $84 million quarterback to do, is to put the team on his shoulders and say, okay, let's go down here and win this. I still have to caution you, Mr. Big Ten, that
what?
he is who he is. We have seen both sides of this. I'm going to be wet blanket because I was earlier in the season when he was. I told you when you were off the bandwagon. I said, you know what? We have seen him do this. These other things where he's played very, very well. So we know he can do that. He will do it again, and he has been doing it. He's the number 2 quarterback over the last 5-6 games in the league or whatever. But he also can still get jittery in the pocket if the pressure's on him, and he can also not be on right away. I love the Cousins that plays angry, who gets out of the pocket and rifles the ball into spots, and he has yesterday in the second half. He looked so decisive, so confident, so strong in those positions. I mean, the dime he dropped to Diggs was phenomenal. Everybody talks about, great catch, great play. The pass was beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, he had to straighten his hips, throw it down there, and it couldn't have been delivered any better. He had the right touch and made the right decision to wait on the touchdown to Rudolph. The pass to Irv Smith was just a bullet in a small window, which was a confident throw. Zimmer kind of describes it after the game as he's playing. He's rather than thinking about too much. He's just going out there and making plays and going for it. And that to me is when we see that Cousins, it's he's. I'm not going to say he's unbeatable. He's tough to beat. And I just want you to remember there are 2 Cousins here, and if the line can give him the time, which I think they did a better job of the second half. Also, he got the ball out quicker. Cousins blamed himself for those first half sacks. So there's 2 Cousins out here. I like the trend he's on, so I wanted to continue. I think his confidence is building. He's starting to figure out who he is and who he needs to be out there. Keep that up, and boy, they're going to be tough in the second half of the season, or the remainder of the season.
Yeah, two of those touchdowns were very similar plays, at least from Cousins' perspective, in that one was a play action rollout to his left, the other one was a delayed draw play action. The first one, the play action, this straight up to his left, was the Diggs one. I'll talk about that one first because Cousins said that that play 99 times out of 100 doesn't work, at least in terms of Diggs being open, and being open that far down the field. Diggs was Cousins' fourth option on that play, so he was the fourth person that he went through in his read progression. And I used that as an example in my article that I wrote yesterday, which somehow took me like 8 hours. That any doubt that Cousins was the right guy for this offense versus Case Keenum last year should be kind of done at this point, especially with what has happened with Keenum being benched yet again on his second team in as many years. I always felt like, as Vikings fans, we should know that lightning doesn't strike twice. For this team, there's always a letdown after a magical season, and so on and so forth. We couldn't expect Keenum to keep playing that far above his average. But that play, it's such a good example of, I think, the team realizing how to better utilize Cousins. I think that, there are two Cousins, and we saw that in this game, but I don't think in the first half there was as many plays that were designed to get him out of that pocket, to get more comfortable. Because I think he's a smart enough quarterback to realize that he just doesn't have the ability to sense pressure, especially from behind, like on that fumble. And so when he gets to move out of the pocket, I think he just feels a lot more comfortable because he at least knows he's bought himself a second or two for on average. I wonder why the team... You can't do that all the time. I understand that. It's also hard to really run the play action when your run game isn't doing anything. Right. But I think that the combination of Cousins having that confidence and the team realizing how to utilize him
I have a question in the first half. We didn't see some more of that, Joe. I mean...
we didn't?
Yeah, why wasn't there just at least a couple times in the first half? And you've kind of enumerated the reasons, but... Well, it was like the tale of two cousins, in the second half.
I know. It's really frustrating. I mean, that was my after the Chiefs game, I kind of came out as one of the lead representatives of the doom and gloom party and explained... The Legion of Gloom? You're the Legion. Oh, I like that one. You're always on point with your nicknames. As a guy that owns a cat named Kitty, I'm very jealous of that. The crux of that article, and we talked about this before, but is that there's three things that can happen negatively to affect the outcome of games for this team: the secondary or the defense, Cousins regressing, or the coaching staff making too cute of game plans, I guess is the best way to put it. Because anytime you hear Zimmer and company say they got too cute, it usually is a disaster. I don't know. I mean, I looked at the Chiefs game and wondered why they didn't just play straight up the way that they had been, namely in the run game, because, at some point, yes, you have to change things up, but also, especially when the playoffs start, you just have to be able to do what you're good at and do it better than the other team is able to do it. I argue that this team, player to player, is more talented than most teams in this league, and they can win by just doing that. And so I don't know what they saw with Denver that made them want to switch things up. I mean, you have Vic Fangio coming from Chicago, who has the familiarity of the Vikings, even though they're running completely different stuff than they did last season. All of it. You think this would be the type of game to get him moving out of the pocket with like Von Miller coming at him every single down.
Thing is, though, they can't continue to do this, especially going forward. We saw that what happens when you spot a team a half of football, like they did with the Packers, you lose that game. When you play Seattle, when you play these NFC North teams coming in, with the exception of Detroit, who's done with their quarterback out, and the I'm not going to, Galdang. I'm not going to concede a victory over the Bears yet until the Galdang Vikings do it, because they really struggle with this team. But they are in total disarray down there in Chicago as well. But they cannot do it against the Packers when they come in here either, because they will beat them. A good team and a good quarterback like Aaron Rodgers will not. Once again, the Vikings were playing a second string quarterback last week, and the defense all of a sudden shut him down in the second half. A total of 3 points after they were gifted about 20 in the first half. So
yeah.
if they can't feel like they're that good that they can just flip the switch. They can't, against a good team, and they certainly won't be able to in the playoffs. So they gotta get back to starting strong and beating opponents from the get-go.
That's the other interpretation of the win that I was alluding to earlier. Is some people are just ecstatic about it and said it shows a lot of guts and moxie, and it shows a lot of things this Vikings team hasn't been known for recently or historically. And then there's the other people saying, why did that happen in the first place? I tend to be in the latter. I mean, I'm very happy that it happened, but exactly. I mean, a team, and if you look at my halftime show, which I said, if the Vikings come back and win, which they might, this is going to age really poorly, but I was pretty fired up about it. And it's just, championship teams don't do that, especially against a team offensively of the caliber of the Broncos. Maybe it's because the guy didn't have a lot of tape. He played one game in Brandon Allen, and he had 2 touchdowns. I did worry. It's actually strangely prophetic if you watch my pregame show. Some of the stuff I was worried about, gadget plays and the unknown of Brandon Allen. I would have much rather faced Flacco, who had 1 touchdown in all of October, and then Brandon Allen had 2 in his first game, which showed at least some spark of life. Plus, the guy is playing for his entire life and his career. He's got Drew Luck behind him, who's coming off the IR and ready to go, and he wants to kind of carve a name out for himself, so you can never really quantify what that's going to mean. But yeah, it's not all daisies, and I don't know, I'm trying to make a new saying for some reason. It's not all positive. I mean, again, there are problems that allowed that to happen. Mm-hmm. The secondary is the negative focal point du jour right now, and we'll talk about actually, let's just get into that really quickly, because one of the stories that came out today was basically that Curse, who was the hero of that defense, of that final drive of the game, alongside
the last 2 games.
Trey Waynes had a really great final part of the game as well. Somehow was arguing with fans on Twitter about his contract. Someone asked if basically Curse tweeted my future, or I'm looking forward to my future, or I'm optimistic about my future, and somebody said, is that future include Minnesota, because his rookie deal is up after this season, and he said no, in a really snarky way. And then Connor Wickland, who was a writer for the site, and he still kind of writes every once in a while for us and other sites, kind of stuck it to him and said, someone asked him if the Vikings were part of his future. He said no. If Curse was part of the Vikings' future, they would have extended him beyond his rookie deal. And then Curse responded to that with 2 thumbs up, sarcastically, yeah, exactly. Which I think was his point of saying, yeah, they haven't invested in me, so why would I worry about them? Which I can completely understand. So it's a precarious situation, I mean, for him, the secondary in general, but him obviously having his arrest and everything doesn't help either. But
yeah, Joe, I was going to ask, this discussion on Twitter happen post-arrest?
Yeah, it happened 2 days ago, or yesterday.
Aaron,
actually.
Come on, man. I mean, look at the whole picture. I mean, he's lucky that he's played the last 2 games. The Vikings certainly were good. It was great to have him. He played wonderfully. He picked off the pass at the Hail Mary at the end of the Dallas game to secure that victory, and then this weekend he comes in and does it. I've been in on gangbangs with him at the locker room, and he's definitely got some moxie. He's got some confidence. He's got some I don't want to say chip on his shoulder, but it sure sounds like he does now with the fact that he's saying that online. But to be perfectly honest, he could be sitting out suspended right now and not being able to put anything on tape to put himself further and get a contract elsewhere right now. If the Vikings wanted to, they could have just said, hey, the heck with you. You know, I mean, it's no offense, but second line defenders don't, who are kind of bit players, don't necessarily get, redone. their contracts immediately when they have it, and he should pay attention, because Zimmer said in his post game, he said, "Yeah, maybe I should get him on the field more."
Yeah,
I don't know if he was serious or not, but come on, dude. They've made you, they've put you in the spots to help you succeed, and you have for the most part. There's a reason why you hadn't been a starter to this point, because someone else was playing better than you. But when they used you, you've done well, and people get too caught up in their good things, and they don't pay attention to the bad things, like a DWI and a gun charge. Hello, and so I don't.
Zimmer
know.
was pissed about that too.
God,
I mean,
absolutely.
The reports were that he was livid about it, which he should.
Doesn't know that. Jeez, if J-Ron doesn't know that, pay attention.
And it is really too bad, because he was the darling of the preseason. Everybody loved him. He's played well when they've called on him. He's a freak athletically. I mean, I can't imagine maybe that the injury to Harrison Smith was kind of a blessing in disguise. I hate to say that, but you have him going up against Noah Fant, who is young, but he's a big guy, and typically your safety or hybrid nickel guy can't cover a tight end like that, the way that
Hughes is having trouble.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's one of the things that you have to look at with Hughes as well. A lot of people are questioning why Rhodes is still getting snaps, and they think maybe Zimmer doesn't have the guts to bench him, whatever that means. I don't think that's the case at all. I if it was anything, which I don't think this would be, maybe it would be stubbornness and not admitting that something's wrong, but I wouldn't say that he's afraid to bench his own player.
He's not. That's
but
silly.
I think we see the need for Curse on this team. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, all things, if not for that arrest, I think and I don't know obviously what's going on behind the scenes, but I would have thought for sure they would try to re-sign him or work something out. I mean, he's been amazing, and nobody saw really this coming. He's been a late bloomer in his rookie deal, and he's been really, really good on in all facets of his game. So I don't know where his anger comes from. I mean,
probably wants first or starter money, and he's trying to make the case for it now, both in the media or online, and by his play on the field. So I'm sure a game like that, when maybe I'm expecting him just to be happy with your life and daisies and bunnies and everything. He's taking it to the nth degree and says, okay, I've done this. I got to capitalize right now. This is how I make myself look. Get a bigger contract, get more money. So
by arguing with fans online, that'll work. What was that guy from the Browns who just got cut because he was threatening to kill all those fans?
Oh my! Didn't hear about that.
Like 2 weeks ago? Yeah, he kept basically saying like, "Come to the, what's your address? I'm gonna come there and beat you up." And he kept saying like, "On blood," which is like a gang reference, like on the gang, like I'm gonna shoot you. And it's like these are like 12-year-old kids, man. Like what are you doing? Man. Yeah, he immediately got cut. But yeah, I mean, for Curse too, he's not your prototypical anything. So giving him starter money, I don't know where he would fit. Maybe if he bulked up, he could be a linebacker, or I don't know how
Zimmer recognizes his value, though.
Definitely, and I think he's utilized it spectacularly.
I agree with you. The rest of the secondary, there are troubles there. We've got some issues. I mean,
it's disconcerting.
Mike Hughes didn't play that great. I was questioning near the end of the game to myself, where the heck is Holton Hill been? Did he even get any snaps? I didn't check, but
not that I had seen or the squirrels next to me mentioned. I wondered about that. On one hand, I want to say that if there's any position group that this late in the season would be in disarray, that I would have confidence that they could turn things around.
Agreed.
You think it would be this for reasons anyone who's a big enough fan to be listening to the show obviously knows. It's Zimmer's favorite position. It's where he cut his teeth. We've invested a lot of really high round draft picks in it that have all, depending on where you stand on each player, have been relatively successful hits in regards to panning out. And I don't know I feel like Wayne's had a bounce back game. He's struggled this season, but Rhodes is just I think his frustration stems from either a conscious or subconscious admission that his body isn't working the way that he's used to it working, and he just doesn't know how to compensate for it or make changes.
That may be.
He's been getting beat pretty consistently.
I will go the other route just a little bit on this. While I agree that there are some problems back there, I felt like in the first half when Brandon Allen was riddling them, looking like Aaron Rodgers to a certain degree, there were some plays that the Vikings had great coverage and things didn't happen. Waynes was on his receiver, just draped all over him, and somehow the ball drops in there and he fumbles it into his arms. And Waynes was just mad after because he goes, "God, how did I miss that?" Same thing with Rhodes. Rhodes even actually turned around and looked, and it was like a half a millisecond too late, but he was right on his guy. So I thought there were. As much as the result was bad, I thought there were moments that they could have gone either way, and they could have been breakups that it wasn't as bad as they thought. So I'm gonna agree with what you said. I was gonna say earlier, if anybody's gonna turn this around on the bye week, it's Mike Zimmer. He's gonna figure out, and he said that, he goes, yeah, I think it's gonna have to be an emphasis, the corners and coverage when we go on break here. So I'm sure they'll take a really deep look at it, because the first guy out of the gate is Russell Wilson and
Ruh-roh.
Yes, exactly. So no, I agree with you. I feel like I'm not ready to throw it all in yet. I'd like to see a little bit more of Holton Hill and maybe more of a rotation where Rhodes can come in and come out and get rested and be ready to go and maybe even get more fired up. You got Mackenzie Alexander, who just loves to play the game, and he has done well in spots. He'll make a mistake here and there, but he's really improved. And Hughes, maybe he's still making his way back from off-season surgery. I'm not going to make that excuse for him, but I think he will return to form. They say it usually takes over a whole season before you completely come back from an ACL. So we'll see. But
as we saw with Waynes or even Rhodes, who was here before Zimmer was, but it takes a while to acclimate to his system. That was one of the reasons why I was not a huge fan of the Jalen Ramsey talk, because especially at the time the Vikings defense was allowing like 15.5 points a game, which was under what they did in 2017. And yeah, the dude's a stud, but you give 2 first-round picks to maybe go down to 14.5 points a game, and then how long does it take for him to learn the system? Especially, he was available for a reason. He's screaming at coaches too.
The Vikings could draft another first-round cornerback with one of those picks.
They very well could, and I wouldn't necessarily be against it. They're relatively stacked at other positions, and usually I get a little upset about the corner stuff. But yeah, I feel like you're right about Rhodes. He did get beat on a few plays that I'm visualizing with the curtains were in the way, but he does seem to be. He's just, I think maybe, and this is pure speculation, but it's again, his body's not working the way that he's used to, so he's just off by a hair. Like Zimmer talking about how he didn't turn his head at the right time in that Giants game. There's been other examples of that where he's been there, but he just doesn't turn his head to look. And maybe he'll figure it out or get healthy over the bye week and whatever's been plaguing. He's only 29 years old. It's not like he's Terrence Newman age either. Right. So it just seems to be something that
they do have to figure it out though. They have to figure it out. It's the Achilles heel of this defense right now. The linebackers are playing pretty well. The defensive line is, and I know you'd put them on the agenda as pressure versus sacks, and they're playing real well. And if I can go there real quick, I don't know what you were going to intro with it, but
I'll just throw it. It's really quickly. The number 1 and number 2 defensive ends in the league in pressures are Hunter and Griffin, 1 and 2.
Wow.
But it just hasn't been translating to sacks as much, and people are saying, is it because there's no interior pressure, so the quarterbacks are able to step up into the pocket and make those throws? It's because the corners or the secondary isn't good, so they can get rid of the ball quickly. That's basically the caveat or the difference.
Well, I think that, Zimmer's always said that his defense is predicated on pressure and not necessarily on sacks. They do the whole be in your position, do what you're supposed to do, make the plays that come to you, and and every once in a while you get home. Now, I thought early in the season, both those guys, Hunter and Griffin, were having great seasons, and they were getting some sacks. Maybe it comes to the changes when you're playing teams with better offensive lines like Dallas and what have you. So ultimately, they're doing what he wants. They're getting the pressure, and I think if you ask him about it, he will reiterate that again. That he says, we're looking to pressure the quarterback, make him comfortable, and if we get home, good deal. If we don't, we'll get him in the back end, or he'll make a mistake. So I'm not going to worry too much about it.
Yeah, not having Linval is big. He doesn't necessarily get a ton of pressures, but he commands a lot of attention on the line. A lot of people are pointing to Watts because a lot of people, in regards to that stat, I think Nick Olson, who writes for Vikings Territory, he's a periodic host of About the Labor, tweeted that out, and people were saying, what's going. I wish we had a up and coming 3-tech that could get pressure, and a lot of people are saying Watts. I would love to see Mata Afa maybe get more playing time because he's almost the anti-curse in that he's just too small, but man, was he a stud in college, both in the pass rush and against the run game, and we'll see. But I don't know. That to me right now, if I'm doing like a bye week mock draft, I would look at the 3-tech position being what they go for in the first round next year, but. That's just me. Speaking of people returning, they're saying Linval should be back from. He had. They announced it this week that he had surgery on his meniscus, but that he should be back after the bye, which is good because that story scared me. Now we've seen weird timetables in regards to returns from almost the exact same thing with like David Morgan, for example.
Right.
It wasn't as much of a meniscus as a cleanup, but. They need him back bad. Thielen should, I think, if I read the headline correctly, Cousins announced somewhere that Thielen will be back against the Seahawks. They're really going to need him, but I do think that, to win all the games that they did without him is a really good sign, and people should be relatively freaked out about this offense at least. Moving forward with Thielen coming back, and I didn't see Doxson at all.
He got a number of snaps, but no targets in the game. But he did get on the field. I didn't even notice him. But yeah.
It seems like they're moving more towards. I saw a breakdown. Smith? Yeah, and the author of the article in the headline said wide receiver. Irv Smith, which he changed, but Bleacher Report never forgets. It's almost like Baskin Robinson, Ant-Man. And I can understand where that maybe some like Freudian slip came from because of the way that he's been lining up. But the Vikings have increasingly been using either like 12 personnel or 22 personnel. I think they're the first or the second least in regards to. The first team in regards to the least amount of 11 personnel, which is just like the 3 or 2 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 1 running back. They're doing all the other ones there's some variation of 2 or 3 tight ends, and that's been an increasing trend. Obviously we've seen Rudy 3 touchdowns in the last 2 weeks. He's been a stud.
5 games.
Yeah, that is talk about a renaissance considering how his season started.
I know I had him, but I cut him. I'm just bitter now. I can't get him back.
Yeah, that's too bad. I also lost against a guy who didn't start like 3 positions, so much for my Saquon Barkley trade fixing my season. I'm sitting there sweating, looking at the matchup, and the guy's probably just deleted his account. But yeah, he got his first touchdown. He's a lot of people are pointing to him to be the wave of the future. There seems to be some confusion as to whether or not the Vikings can cut Rudy outright after this season. I thought he could, but then people were saying that there's like $6 million in dead cap money if they do cut him before the end of next season. But either way, I think that just reflects the effect that Kubiak's been having on this offense, and I say more power to him because I wrote an article about Kubiak, the QB whisperer. Speaking of changing headlines, I think it should have been maybe the tight end whisperer, because he is a genius and he's had success everywhere that he's gone.
It's funny that we always call Zimmer I'm sorry, did you finish?
I just said, yeah, it's exciting that he's getting more involved.
We always call Zimmer the cornerback whisperer, and it's pretty ironic because he doesn't whisper anything.
Scream whispers, maybe. He's got that raspy voice, but I'm looking at this game and I'm seeing how granted, 2 of those touchdowns, like I said, were play action, and I think Cook ended the day with like 11 carries for 26 yards, like a 2.4 average, but defenses still have to respect him enough to, especially on the Rudy touchdown, the corner that was covering Rudy dropped off of him because of that delay in the respect that he has for Cook. I don't think that would have happened last season. And so even when he's not getting the production we're used to, I think that you can't really discount the impact that he has. Longer point being that, man, this offense is cooking. It is that was not meant to be a pun, but I'll take it. And it's if the defense can figure it out, I mean, the sky could be the limit for this team.
They cooked for one half anyway. Wet blanket.
Yeah, but man, was it a good half. And then you look at Cousins' numbers since the Bears game, and even his overall numbers on the season, 3 interceptions versus, it's astounding.
It is. His numbers are phenomenal. I mean, there's someone put out something that I retweeted that it showed where he ranks in all these categories, and it's 1, 2, or 3 across the league, and it's like, whoa, that's not bad.
And it's to be expected. I mean, you have that much talent around him. You patch up the offensive line and get him just to be maybe mediocre. Then you bring in a guy like Kubiak, who's done a lot more with a lot less, and it's not that surprising. What is, I guess, surprising is, if you were to put this offense with the 2017 defense, granted they kind of wilted in that NFC Championship game, and the Vikings they sort of touched on the first drive, almost they were going down the field on the second one, had that turnover. But man, it's such a nightmare for opposing defenses when things are going well, which they seem to be for the most part.
Well, we've seen on both ends of the equation that opposing coaches and coordinators have figured out ways to beat this team, to exploit their weaknesses on both sides, and put pressure on. Load the box and take the running game away and put pressure on Cousins, and there's trouble back there. You have to be as good as we've looked at times. The Vikings have looked at in certain games. They've looked bad in other parts too. So the same with the defense. There's people who have said that coaches have figured out how to beat Zimmer's defense.
Yeah,
it's all about game planning and execution ultimately when it comes down to it, and how well they are ready to play. I mean, I think Zimmer was just as confused and befuddled and ticked off as everybody else was watching the defense in the first half of that game. I mean, you got to be scratching your head. I mean, they just looked so flat and so out of it that plays happening here and there that you just like, man, what's going on here? And then so these things happen. I was chatting with my brother and he was complaining about just because it's right for a letdown and shouldn't happen, but they're human. This happens, but you have to be able to rise above it, and teams that do from week to week to week are the ones that win championships and continue to do it. And I think there's a big contest ahead of them with Seattle, but I'm really excited for him to see him come back home against the Lions and light them up. So I would love to see this team just get healthy, get on a roll, and just really go up on a huge mental, momentum into this last 5 games of the year and into the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, touching on what the original point was, which is like the 2 ways to look at this game, either it should have happened in the first place or like maybe building off of it. I think from the team, from all that I've seen, at least from a public standpoint, the tweets, the locker room stuff, I think that it was a huge momentum builder for them. I think it gave them a different kind of confidence that they are able to come back, that they are able to win a close game in the fourth quarter. Getting the defense involved on that as well, with all the opportunities that they had on that last drive, and really have Cousins put things on his shoulders. I mean, Diggs said, he deserves a lot more credit and a pat on the back. He's my quarterback. You could tell he was making sure to publicly say things based on things that happened earlier this season. But
well, yeah, it was stats too. He should say that. Go ahead.
I think they are looking at it as maybe Zimmer isn't, but the players are like, man, for us to come back like that, maybe we got something special here, and we can beat air it out against a top 4, top 5 defense. Whoa, yikes.
Just so they don't come in against Seattle overconfident. I was trying to think, as at the end of the first half, I was sitting there thinking, man, what does this say for going out to Seattle next week? Where, they lose this game, they're going to be festering for a week and a half, and is that going to be good or bad for them? Now I want to guard against taking false pride out of this thing. Because granted, the second half phenomenal, but you got to play 60 minutes. And you, like I said earlier, you can't spot good teams big leads because you're going to lose. That's all there is to it. So I hope they're fired up. They're pissed off at themselves for playing that poorly in the first half, and they start out strong on the road.
Where would you put the Vikings in terms of the larger picture in the NFC? The NFC's got a lot of really good teams.
I get a little frustrated, Joe. Seeing them in the 6th seed right now. You know? I feel like they deserve higher, but they're not. I mean, what you just said, there's so many good teams that I was looking at today. I said, oh my goodness, they're actually behind. They're the only team that they could move past or have a better record than is Dallas. Of the other. All the other teams are ahead of them. Seattle, San Francisco, the Packers.
And then I saw a stat before the show this morning that said the Vikings have a 93% chance of making the playoffs, which you would think as the 6th seed wouldn't necessarily be the case.
It's got a 3-game lead on the next.
I suppose.
Yeah, that's the key right there, because the next one, Carolina lost, and Philadelphia lost, so they both have 5 wins. The Vikings have 8, so it's like
But it's also the Vikings.
Why. Pardon me.
It's also the Vikings.
What is?
Just I meant like if anyone could blow a 3-game lead this late in the season, it's the Vikings. Because ironically, that's a good segue just really quickly to go through the history of the Vikings' hot starts, 8 or 3 or better since the 16-game schedule rolled out. We have 2017. Everyone remembers that. 2015, the wide left game. 2009, they started 10-1 with Favre. They ended 12-4. They kind of rested their way in those final games into that playoff. 2000, which reminded me a lot of 2017 in that I was convinced as a junior in high school that if we could avoid playing the Rams or the Bucks, that we would go to the Super Bowl. And then we end up playing Kerry Collins and the New York Giants, and I thought, we got this. I don't care if it's in New York/New Jersey. We're definitely going to win. I know. Same thing as the Eagles. I thought, I'll take Nick Foles over, the Rams or the I forget who the other team was at the time, but
that was, play the games, brother.
98, we remember that. 1997, I don't remember this, but not because I was too young, just because I didn't really focus on football till 98 for obvious reasons. They were 8-3, but then they lost 4 of their last 5 and went 9-7, and they did make the playoffs. They beat the Giants in the first round by 1 point, then they lost to the 49ers, and then 1992, 8-3, ended 11-5. So I mean, it depends on how much, I guess, how well you think that they'll play against the Chargers, who did beat the Packers, who had a really flat game. But 3 division games, Seattle and Los Angeles, I believe. And, no, definitely in Los Angeles. And we'll see.
It's a game they should win. It's a game they should win, and they have to win because, they still could have trouble with the Bears. The Bears are going to be trying to save their jobs at the end of the season. The Packers will be tough the week before. That'll be the big game the Vikings get all up for, and then, have a potential letdown against the Bears. So that one's in question. The Lions, if they don't win, oh my goodness, they will win that game.
Well, they're gonna have a backup quarterback playing, correct? And that seems to be their kryptonite. So
that's no good. I watched the Chargers play the Chiefs last night, and they played them tough. But boy, what's his name? Philip Rivers throws 4 interceptions, and he'd come into the game with the most in the league. I think it was 11, and if they can get him to do something like that, I don't think it should be a problem. But and it will be a home game for the Vikings out in Los Angeles because there's a lot of fans out there, and the Chargers certainly don't have a following. So I'm not too worried about that. It gave me pause when they beat the Packers so well, but I don't think the Packers are as tough as their record would suggest. I think they're a very good team, but that one I'm taking with a grain of salt. I think the Vikings will win out there. So, you got to win those home games and win a couple on the road. But they've won 3 on the road, so they're putting themselves in a pretty darn good position. So,
do you think there's any chance they win the North?
Yes, I do, because I think they'll beat the Packers when they come here. I think if they could drop it in Seattle and then win the next 2, and then be 10-4 with the Packers and the Bears left. The Packers coming in. If you got to, I think hopefully the Packers will lose on Monday night to San Francisco, and then that game is for the division. And I think if it comes down to that, I think the Vikings will win.
Oof. Man, it's going to be a good end to the season. If people are looking to get some tickets, definitely hit up purpleptsd.com. The homepage on the right side, you'll see a square box for Ticket Club. Click on that. Use our discount code SKOLPTSD, and you get a free 12-month membership to Ticket Club, which is like a fee-free, almost like Netflix for tickets, so you don't have to pay those 20% fees each ticket. It's a $50 value. You get it for free. But something fun we wanted to do to round out the show going into the bye week was something I always look forward to each season, which is a tradition that goes pretty far back for you, Joe, in the Baikus. And if you wanted to explain that, we're going to have a little contest on social media, and then we'll announce the winner next week and read the top selections.
It started with Bo Mitchell, who did it before we all joined forces at Vikings Journal, the predecessor to this website, Purple PTSD, but he would always do during the bye week is what he called Vikings Baikus, or Vikings Haikus, and I've turned it into Vikings Baikus because
much better name.
I'm a punster, but anyway, they're all about just writing Viking haikus, whatever strikes your fancy about the team, and 5 syllables, 7 syllables, 5 syllables in the 3 lines is the format of the thing, and to be an official haiku, you include something about nature. So it's something fun we've done, and we've got something to a little light that can have fun with on the bye week when you're really looking hard for stories, and I look forward to it. I enjoyed it. We hope that people want to take a look at them and participate and put some of their own up on the site. And like you said, it's going to be a contest, Joe.
Yeah, and either the winner or the top 3 will get either a Vikings Garden Gnome or some Purple PTSD or Vikings Territory merch. Is that true about haikus? They have to be about nature? I never knew that. Certainly. There should be some element of nature or the natural world in there. That's why I wrote one about, as an example for you guys, I had written one about the Kirk Cousins dropping dimes like leaves falling. So my little allusion to nature. You don't have to do that. We aren't going to hold you to that, but that's in traditional haikus. That's it's the 3 lines, 5, 7, 5 syllables, and then some kind of reference to nature or the natural world. So. Oh, my girlfriend speaks fluent Japanese and is also writes poetry. So I shouldn't have said that because I definitely could have used that to my advantage. I suck. I should be an undercover cop. Let me buy the drugs. I swear I'm not wearing a wire. I gotta go. All right. Well, this has been the Morning Joe's program for the 19th of November. We will be back next week, next Tuesday, to look forward to the Seahawks game. Typically, we preview the next week's game, but obviously there isn't one, so we'll be looking forward to that. I want to thank everyone who's been tuning in. Our numbers have been really, really great lately, and that means a lot to us. I also have been increasing the amount of video shows that I've been doing on my show, Purple Update, which is just I'm building towards a daily live show that does a lot of audience participation. There's a lot of YouTube type shows that are recorded and edited and have all sorts of fancy graphics and stuff. I want to kind of do things differently, just do the show live and get your guys' questions. That is going to be, as long as you follow us on social media, you should see it. It'll be on YouTube, Periscope / Twitter Live, Facebook Live, and one more that I can't remember, LinkedIn, I think, for some reason. So keep an eye out for that. I'll be actually doing that today, which by the time you hear this, unless you're listening live, it'll already have premiered, but I will work out a better time to do that each day, so people can look forward to it and watch it at work and get written up for it. But this has been Morning Joe's for the 19th of November. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Skol.